Cameron, thank you so much for joining me for a few minutes. Congratulations on your work on Washington Black. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first, thank you, Manny. I'm excited to be here. Washington Black it was a really fun adventure for me. I mean, I have, kind of dreamed of being able to work on a series or a movie like this for my whole life. Goes all the way back to, when I was watching Star Wars as a kid, humming Duel of the Fates, running around with a lightsaber. It was kind of my vision for my career to be able to be a part of something like this. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I was so excited to be able to step into this world. And it was just the most fun time that I've had. I mean, it's a good story. It's something I think a lot of people can resonate with. I think it touches on all of the pertinent themes of, hope and freedom and the power of dreaming and the power of dreams. And musically, it's vast and it's huge. And we get to be in this traditional symphonic sandbox that you don't hear a lot, especially not on TV. So it could not have been a better experience for me and everybody on the team, from our showrunner, Kim Harrison, on down to all the producers, to my music editors and the musicians that we recorded the score with here in Los Angeles. It was the perfect situation. So I really have no complaints about it whatsoever.
Now, in Washington Black, you get the opportunity really to play in a sandbox of different, um, not necessarily time because obviously it all takes place in the same time frame, but well, actually, no, I take it back. There's flashbacks. I mean, we see flashbacks, we see pirates, we're back in England, we're in the South, we're in the North, just different type of vibes for different types of music. How fun was that for you to be able to play with different regions of the world during that time period?
It was something that we actually tried to stay away from too intensely. The idea for the music wasn't that it was supposed to be geographically colored. Rather, we decided to take a more general emotional approach because these are the experiences of our title character, and it actually helped to kind of unify all of the locations, all of the settings, and like you said, the different time periods, because we do jump back and forth about a decade from the older version of Wash down to the child. So it was important for us that we didn't have music that felt like Barbados when we're there, and felt like, America when we're there, felt English in character when we're in London. Rather, we wanted it to kind of feel like one unified piece. And I think that was really beneficial, that we were able to achieve that through the use of the orchestra, because it's a very emotive, expressive medium. I think it's one of the great, if not inventions, at least discoveries of Western culture. And so to be able to utilize that almost exclusively for this was really helpful. And I mean, the real key for unlocking the music was finding out what Wash's theme was, what was his material. And, we see a lot of him obviously in the show, but we see a lot of moments where he's kind of making a scientific discovery or understanding or unlocking something else about his interest in that world. And initially, the material that I had written for that was what became his theme. So every time something would happen where he would make a discovery, we see it a few times in episode one. That would be where I would play that material. But I found over the course of writing that that kind of came up a lot. And so it felt like it was appropriate that we could bridge that gap and those two ideas could converge and become one. And so once I figured out what Wash's material was, then it's malleable. Then you can play it according to the situation. You can kind of mature it as he gets older. You can play it fast or slow or with the whole orchestra or just with a soloist. And it really allowed a lot of freedom of versatility to be able to treat it according to what's happening. So it was really, really key first that we feel that the score is as big as the story, because the novel and all of the scripts take us all over the world. We needed to feel that in the music. It didn't need to. We didn't want it to feel like something that was not commensurate with the story. But then the other thing was we wanted to avoid anything that could connote slavery or the Atlantic slave trade, just because that's not what the story is about. It's an adventure story. It's elements of fantasy and romance, and sure, there's some danger in there and some action and what have you. But it was really, Kim described it as our Peter Pan, and
Mhm.
that was one of the earliest conversations that she and I had. That was the thing that she kept saying, was this is our Peter Pan, and the producers echoed that by saying, well, this is our, in addition to that, this is our ET, right? And that, when you hear that as a composer, it makes you nervous, because ET is just one of the greatest scores ever written. So that was absolutely no pressure, you know what I mean? But in terms of the way that the music makes you feel and the way that it helps tell the story, that was the perfect descriptor for it. So, I think our version of success is not necessarily if the theme resonates as much as, the over the moon sequence from ET, but if we can have emotionally our Elliot flying over the moon somehow in the show, whether it's with Wash or with the whole gang or whatever, then that would be a successful marriage of music and the visuals.
Yeah, I like that. So you guys really took the composition and really had it stick to the characters rather than the um surrounding the environment that they're in, which is
Absolutely.
really well done. One thing I did want to ask you, and this might be too broad of a question, but I have to ask you anyway, because of your striving to continue to use orchestras, something that maybe is not used as much, maybe going
Sure.
away a little bit with technology. But you love to record with orchestras, and you did so, and you're an advocate for that. Tell me, what are some of the keys to orchestral storytelling based on what you've done so far?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that it is at least in the film world, it's all responsive, it's all reactive. We are reacting to the visuals. And so in that way, there's no point in prioritizing writing something pretty, right? Or writing something that will be a chart topper on an album or in an album. It was really about trying to get into the heart of the narrative and understanding the motivations of these characters and the way that their arcs are kind of shaped, and then reacting to that. So for me, it was less about needing to write because ultimately, if this score had called for electronics, that's where the direction we would have gone. If it had called for world instruments on a larger scale, that's the direction we would have gone. It just so happened that the kind of blanket emotional approach was something that was really heavily prioritized. And so for me, as far as how I approach it, I mean, it starts very simple. I sit down at the piano and I try to figure something out. I try to find something to latch onto, and it from a thematic perspective. And so for me, it was a fairly intuitive process. We spotted the first episode, I think, around this time last year, actually. So it's been almost a full year, which is crazy. But after sitting and watching it, I took the rest of that day to just sit down and try to kind of crystallize an idea. And every scene that you score, every episode, or every project that you work on, really the operative goal beyond helping to tell the story is, well, what does this sound like? What does this world sound like? And I think that's the hardest question to answer, and one that you don't really know until you're finished, and it's kind of released out into the world. So for me, it was starting there and trying to find something that felt like a way into this world, and then it's a cell, so it'll just kind of grow and take over the whole thing. And then it's just a matter of listening to the filmmakers. I mean, when we would spot, they would have very detailed, not necessarily instructions, but narrative goals for the scenes. So we would talk at length about what the music is doing narratively, not necessarily in musical terms. We wouldn't talk about, well, we need violins here, we need brass there, we need this or that. It was more so about what the music is, what service it's functioning, or what function it's servicing rather. So it uh it was really important to listen to them and to understand what it was we're trying to do narratively. And then I can take that and interpret it and then we mine it. So there were some cues that I turned in that version one got approved and it was on to the next. And there were some cues where we had to sit with it. We had to work with it, kind of exchange some ideas back and forth and figure out how to get it to the destination that we needed. But I think that the team had a lot of confidence in me, which was obviously reciprocal, but it's definitely very helpful when you step into something of this scale to be able to have that trust that I understand what it is they're trying to go after, and that they understand that I'm receptive to that and I'm hearing it. I'm not just going to be freestyling, for 8 episodes. So it was a really great collaborative process, and it was, I think, built on a lot of trust and confidence. So that for me made it easy. And then, of course, when you're asking me to write with an acoustic orchestra, that's the thing that I've studied since I was a child, and I have dedicated most, if not all, of my time in this world to developing an orchestral vocabulary. So it wasn't necessarily that it came easily, that I won't pretend that it was easy, but it was definitely something that was instinctual and intuitive in that way. So it felt very natural.
What were some of your inspirations as far as scores go as you were growing up and learning? What were some of the movies that stick out to you? Um, that really influenced you in who you are now as a composer? Of course, you have your own sound now,
For
but
sure.
what were some of your favorite ones?
Well, the biggest one, which I think will come as no surprise to anybody, was Star Wars. I saw the films in numerical order, and my parents still give me crap about that now. I saw them from The Phantom Menace up to the Return of the Jedi. So in number five, the twist just was ruined. I'm like, I knew that already. We saw this. I get it. There's no shock there. But I remember when I was a kid, my older sibling and I, we had a bunch of toy lightsabers of all the different colors, and we would run around in our bathrobes humming Duel of the Fates while we were going on missions and cutting down droids in our heads. But the piece of that that stuck out to me most was it was as if we had heard this music a million times, or as if we wrote it almost, because I knew it backwards and forwards. We would always skip to the end of the films because that's where the fights were. But that was also where like the most interesting music I thought at the time was in those fights. It was fast paced. There was a lot of propulsion, a lot of energy. So Star Wars definitely sits atop the list, but there were some others. For example, a movie called Drumline, which was Nick Cannon,
Yeah, love
um,
it.
which is funny because that movie came out in the year I was born, so it's not something that I was on the ground floor of, but it was one of the movies I saw earliest in my life. I remember it was on VHS at the time, and the shell casings of the VHS tapes sounded kind of like the snare drum. So I would take pencils or whatever and just beat the crap out of these VHS tapes, not understanding that it wouldn't then go into the machine and play correctly. But Drumline was one of my favorite movies, and I think that's the kind of the genesis of my, I guess you could say, percussive training, if you will. I mean, just being able to hear something and kind of replicate it. Um, because I would sit and watch the movie and all of the rhythms I would try to just mimic, I would try to just mime it and mirror it. But what's interesting for me, Manny, is I took it as a kind of personal challenge to trace the lineage of the film music that I enjoyed. So I would try to find, where did Star Wars come from? Where did The Godfather come from? Where did Poltergeist come from? All these Indiana Jones, all these films that some of them I probably saw way too young. Um, my goal was to try to find their inspirations because I wanted to trace the source, and that would lead me, I think, to a more pure understanding of the language and the craft. So my whole thing was I was a bit of a bookworm. I would find scores online, or I would try to convince my parents to purchase them, or whatever it was. If there was a library that had a music archive, I would go there. And this was really later into my high school years. And I would sit in, wherever in my bedroom or in the library and just pull them apart. I mean, I still have in here somewhere my original copy of The Planets, the Gustav Holst, and that was something that I think it was fair to say that Star Wars was very heavily influenced by, and it's marked up. I mean, to the nth degree. So it's somewhere I have to pull it out, but it's that was fun for me. That was the way that I would kind of feel connected to the craft, was through all of the symphonic literature, if you will. So those were the kinds of things that I spent my time doing, and then eventually you transition into writing, and it's all kind of you know facsimile. It's all kind of pastiche. It's the things that you enjoy, and you're trying to sound like that. But over time, it starts to develop into something different, and I think I can credit those years of just sitting and kind of being really methodical with how much I was pulling these scores out and apart. I think I can credit a lot of that to, I guess you could say, developing my language and my kind of affinity for the orchestra. So that's kind of where it started.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing all that. I mean, I got to tell you, my daughter and I, she's 14. She's looking right now to start playing the piano, and especially now that we have a very good piano at our home, thanks to my wife's grandparents. But we often, when we go on road trips, we just play instrumental soundtracks from movies, and
Yeah.
we talk about the emotion it conveys.
Mhm.
And then because we know the scenes front and back, but if you take away the pictures, what's left, and we're always fascinated by how much emotion is is in just just the sound alone, and which is why I love having conversations with people like you, because I'm fascinated at how you're able to create that.
It's really a weird phenomena, I think. It's not, if it's done right, then your score album or whatever, like you said, can kind of exist in a singular form, but you can still connect it. And I remember that was something that I used to do as well, was not only listen and reenact the scene with just the music, but almost try to imagine a different scene and see how that colors the music now, because it's ultimately you can't have one without the other. And it was really fun to try to put a different spin on it and say, okay, well, if this was for a death scene, maybe now it's for, I don't know, a coronation. Maybe now it's for a big battle or something, and just try to see how that feels and try to play with that emotion. And ultimately, that's really what drew me, I think, to becoming a composer at all, was how I felt. It wasn't that it was just, oh, I love the sound of a French horn. It's like, I like how that makes me feel. And my only goal in life, really, or at least in my professional life, was to try to replicate that. And that's the thing that's kept me going all this time, is that 6-year-old kid who really wanted to feel like that again watching Star Wars. And so I try as much as I can to hold on to that and to not let that kid die, and let that kid go, because that's really the heart of it, the heart of the whole, the whole business, really, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, Duel of Fates is a wild piece for that, and so and yeah, you can definitely, I can see anyone being able, any fans being able to play that out with their siblings, and it's a
Sure.
good time. I know for me, scores, I'm a big fan of going to like Universal Studios,
Okay.
and the moment I know I've got there is when I start hearing all of the soundtracks playing, and so that sticks with me, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to have a good time, but it's that
Yeah.
sound. So I love that. One thing I do want, a final question I want to ask you: what is it?
Sure.
What kind of energy do you feel? What is it like for you to be in the room with an orchestra as they're playing your pieces, as you're working? Because I imagine, I mean, I can't imagine how much energy that room must have.
There are very few experiences like it. I mean, truly, it is one of the most exhilarating, terrifying feelings. Not only when you have 100 eyeballs or however many are in the orchestra staring at you, standing on a box, telling them what to do. Like, there's that piece of it, right? But then there's just the fact that you're so close to the action, and the air starts to move in the room in a way that it doesn't in many other places. And once it comes alive and it comes off the page or out of the computer and becomes real, there's no stopping that train. And it's really, really special to hear it, whether it's your music or not. Just going to a symphony concert, I go to see the LA Phil a good amount. And it's the same kind of thing. Whether you've heard the piece 1,000 times or it's the first time, anytime that you're sitting in a room with an orchestra and they begin to play all as one, suddenly 80 voices or 100 voices become a single unit. And that is just, it's worth its weight in gold. And especially if, it's something like this, where it's a show or a film or a video game or what have you, to be in a room with the best musicians in the world on one of the best stages in the world, and they're all there to play something that you've written. I mean, that's really, really cool. And I always prefer to be conducting the orchestra as opposed to not, just because I feel like now I'm one with the performance and one with the music in an additional way. It's not like I kind of get the baby all the way up and then have somebody else take the reins. I like to be there from ground floor all the way to the top, and it's fun. I mean, that's really the thing I keep coming back to. This business is fun. Everything that we get to do, we get to wake up every day and help tell stories. We get to wake up every day and either report on stories or make them, or write music for them or direct them or write them or whatever. Like, that's fun. So I try not to take it too seriously, in the sense that I'm losing out on the fun. Obviously, we have to get the work done, and there's money changing hands and deadlines and things that you have to attend to. But at the end of the day, this is not open heart surgery, right? So we are in an industry where it should be fun. We should be able to enjoy the experience and tap into that inner child. And so for me, conducting is the truest representation of that, just because the hard part, finger quotes, is over now, because the music's been written, it's been approved, everybody's happy, ideally, especially in this case, everybody was happy, which is great. But now you get to just do it. You get to make the music real now. And I mean, that's, I could wake up every day for the rest of my life and do that and be a-okay.
Hey, you know what? And we'd love for you to do it because you were great in Washington Black. I look forward to seeing what else you have cooking up later, whether it's another series, whether it's a movie, whether it's all of the above. I think you're going to be doing great, especially because one of my notes, it says here you are one of the youngest composers ever to score a 20th century television series. So congratulations on that as well. Um, Cameron, thank you so much for your time. It means so much to me to be able to sit with you, to chat with you, and to get to know you, get to know your music, your process, because it for me, and I hope also for audiences, it better allows us to enjoy the medium, the final product, because we know what kind of heart went into it.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you again for having me. This has been a real treat for me.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll chat on your next project. I can't wait.
Let's do it. I'll be here.